Hi, welcome to Sacred Enzyme. I'm Stacy, and this is going to be the first part of a series of episodes that I'm going to be doing where I'm going to be talking about the evidence that the early Greeks were in the southeastern portion of the United States, and the area of my focus right now is going to be on Florida, since I live in Florida. And I want to talk about, first of all, before we start into it, the things that started me on this search and the things that I've been looking for. Okay, so one of the things that I noticed about this old world archaeology is that it all has columns, and we've talked about these columns and you know, how they have different ionic orders on them, and how in actuality they could have some kind of significance with old world times, and being a kind of a capacitor for bringing electricity from the planet. And I've talked about that in my other videos, my ideas on that. But you know, Florida is interesting because, you know, when you're talking about old world structures and you're talking about star forts and different things like that, and when you just start studying philosophy and theology and anatomy and everything like that, and how minerals and things like that work, you start to realize is that water is pretty special, real special. So when you have areas and countries that are surrounded by water, then you're getting a lot more energy in these areas. And so I think that one of the reasons that Florida was special in antiquity was because of the energy that was here. And the other thing is that you have areas where you have estuaries all along the coastline, and Florida has a lot of very old estuaries, and they use these areas, these estuaries, because you have salt water coming into contact with fresh water. And in very, very old myths, they talk about that the first creation on this planet, that's how it came about. It came about between the union of the fresh water and the salt water intermingling. So there's something to do with the water and how it relates to areas of our planet where we have a lot of these structures that are built like right on the edges of water and all around water, and coves, and how they've rerouted the water in a lot of cities and redirected dams and changed dams directions, like Boulder Dam is one. And you know, Edgar Casey talks about in one of his books, I can't remember which one, but he's talking about a reading where he was told that out in the southwest portion of the United States, like down in New Mexico and Colorado, in that area, that there was an ancient civilization that lived there. And there actually turned out to be there was an ancient civilization was there when they rerouted the Boulder Dam. When they redid the Boulder Dam over the original dam that was there, and they rerouted that water, they flooded that whole place out so nobody would find it. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's hidden with the water. So, you know, the old saying, the best place to hide things is in plain sight, right? Exactly. So we're looking for the clues that are hidden in plain sight, because there's lots of hidden clues that are in plain sight. And one of the hidden clues is Greek. Greek was here. The Mycenaeans, I don't care what you tell me. You look at those old Mycenaean vessels that they made, those pots with that type of painting, and they're all over this all over this earth. Those types of paintings on those pots reached everywhere. So the Mycenaean culture was everywhere. And Mycenia, that came from Aemilius, Adama. So the descendants that came out of this area have to be the golden serpents, I would say. I'm not sure how they would be, or I don't know. All I know is that that when I went to Arcadia, which the reason I went to Arcadia is because Arcadia is the name of a country that is in ancient Greece, in Anatolia, and it means animal husbandry and like harmony in nature and stuff. And there's two deities that inhabit Arcadia, and that's Pan and Hermes. So I was pretty surprised when I read that. I said, well, that gives a whole new dimension to Arcadia. So we had an Arcadia here, and I went to Arcadia, and the first place I went was to the county seat, the DeSoto County Courthouse, and just come to find out that's one of the original buildings in town that's left. Well, they did try to modernize it, and I took a video of it. It has the columns on the top. You know, it has the Ionic columns, and I think they were in Corinth, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to go back and look, but anyway, it also had leftover Greek letters on the building. So, you know, the Greek alphabet didn't have the letter U. And the letter U didn't even come into use in signage. I think it was, I wrote it down, 1629. So, if they didn't even use the letter U until 1629, then this building's older than 1629. It has to be before 1629, because they would have just built it with the U's, right? Instead of changing them out. So this building was taken over before 1629. And then the letters were changed out multiple times, because you can tell where the letters have been changed out, but they just kept the V's in there. They tried to recycle some of the letters, which I give them props for trying, but the new letters are smaller. And then the other thing I found was interesting is when I was looking at that building, is that up in the top left and top right corner of each side of the building, almost like a cornerstone, but up in the top, it's a harp. And a harp is a Greek goddess symbol. And there was also buildings downtown in Arcadia, and I'll post a video of it. You can look at the symbology on them. That was right down the street, and it was painted pink, and literally this building was so huge. And it has like an arcade that goes into it. I don't know how else to explain it, but they made it into apartments, and I took a picture because when you first walk in the door, halfway through the middle of the building from the street, which it probably goes down several layers, right? Because it was probably originally, you know, used for something else, but it was huge. Like, you could probably drive a car through there. You know, and it had all of this architecture inside, and these old hanging lamps, and all of this wrought iron. And I've seen this wrought iron that was like this at Bach Tower. And so the building, it has the old Greek letters on it, and it has symbolism on it. But this building that was pink, it had these symbols that looked like sperm, kind of going in a swastika type fashion. And then it also had these laurel leaves on it, like, you know, from the Olympics, those laurel leaves, it's always associated with Greece. It had laurel leaves on it. And I really found that interesting, that I was seeing only two buildings, because the third building was really kind of nondescript, because they set the whole town on fire and burned it down. They burnt the whole town down. And then they repurposed all of the buildings that didn't burn down by covering them with new brick to hide the exterior. So there's something with the city Arcadia. There's something to be said about Arcadia. And then there were also a couple markers that were downtown, and one of them was just this fountain that was sitting in a very strange spot in the middle, kind of like a parking lot, and it didn't even have any water running in it. It just had dirt filled in it. And then it had a bunch of begonias planted in it. And then there was this tree that was right next to it, which kind of set me off, because this tree had a bunch of benches that were going around it in a circle, and it was a really old tree. And I took a picture of that because I thought that was really interesting. This tree had all these memorialized benches around it. And then there was one more spot where they had the marker for the city. And it just talked about how the city had this massive blaze, and I don't know, 1906, 1905, somewhere around there, and it burnt the city to the ground, and they had to rebuild it, and that only 3 buildings survived. But you can go and look on my page at Arcadia and see. But I think that the city of Arcadia, and along with a bunch of other cities in Florida, and I'll give you the whole list of names of just cities that I've come with, just sitting down for like 10 minutes time, thinking of cities off the top of my head. Odessa, Venice, Marathon, Manola, New Smyrna, which there's an old Smyrna in Greece. A lot of these cities are named after older cities in Greece. Some of them were named after gods. Okay, New Smyrna, Juno Beach, Vero Beach, Ithaca, Neptune Beach, Miramar, Nokomis. So I mean, these are cities that are here in Florida that are named in Greek fashion. These are Greek city names, or these are also Greek gods. And so I found that it was interesting is that, you know, we have so much Greek influence just in our cities here. And the other thing that I found really interesting is that, you know, that you have all these gods. You have these gods that I've talked about in my Amelia series that, you know, we've been trying to glean knowledge on if we can corroborate the character Amelius that Edgar Casey talked about so much in his readings. And Amelius was supposed to be the original projection of humanity. He said that he was the Adama, and that he was and that he came to earth as Earth Adam, that he sacrificed himself. So the interesting thing is that when I started going back and doing this research on how I could corroborate this Adama, I came to realize that he's actually Zeus's brother. That they're all brothers and sisters, and that their influence is throughout the state of Florida. Now, what they were doing here, when they were here, your guess is as good as mine. But I would say that, you know, things started changing here around the 15 and 1600s is when things started getting taken away. I think that the Greeks were, you know, I think that the Greeks were here a long time ago. I would say they could have been here as long as up 3,000 years ago, you know, and we could be talking about, you know, this culture influence was turned over, you know, in a shorter time than what we might think, you know what I mean? This reset has really only been happening since we had the Dark Ages. So we've got a whole family of gods, and we've got, you know, we've got Amelius here, who is the Adamas, and the Adamas is basically another translation for Almathea, who is the founder of the island of Malta in the Monian culture. So that's how we get Adamas as the progenitor of the Malta culture. So that's pretty interesting that we can trace Amelius back to the family of the 12 Titans, and that he was killed by his brother Prometheus. And you know, I could understand why there would have been a rebellion against Zeus, because Zeus was impregnating all the nymphs. And you know, as we talked about from Edgar Casey's readings, that those nymphs were set up by Adamas. He set those up. Amelius set those up because he needed those oracles in place, and those girls had to be chaste. They had to be virgins. They had to know everything. They had to be divinely inspired, and they had to live a very clean life because they had to be able to stay connected to him. And see, it requires a lot of discipline. So he had these nymphs that he put in place, and they were semi-human, and they were half gods. That's why they were called nymphs. And Zeus was having his way with the nymphs, and so what was happening is that the sex was coming into the Bacchic initiation rites. See, these nymphs were the oracle, and how they got their oracle. I think it was strictly a ladies only thing. They didn't have men in these Bacchic rites because this wasn't about sex. And so you had these Medeas, these mothers, you had these nymphs, you had these goddesses, and these goddesses had the medication in their cells. They had it in their seminal fluid, they had it in their mammary glands, and see, they brought medicine and healing. And so the other thing was that they were able to maintain the connection with the higher realm in the earthly body. And they were supposed to be left sacred and chaste, but they were being violated. So this is how your Bacchic order takes off. This is how this takes off, is that it crossed the line. And then you have a rebellion. And Adama was killed by Poseidon. Adama rebelled against Zeus, his brother. And you know, Adama does say in Edgar Casey's books that, you know, that he was the one that started everything, and that he knew that he messed up and he had to sacrifice himself. So maybe having Poseidon kill him, because they say that Poseidon's not really bad or good, you know, that he's neither, but he did bring knowledge to humanity. So maybe he had Poseidon kill him on purpose because he wanted to come back as the Adam, because he had everything set up. He had everything set up. He was going to come back. So, Arimathea was the character in mythology that raised Zeus up. So I kind of thought that was interesting. So we've got 3 versions of Adama. So I don't know if Arimathea was the female version of Adamas, and that's how we get the island of Malta. And I don't know. I'm still doing research on that. So, but the question is that how far and wide does this Greek influence stretch in the United States, right? I mean, we have clues everywhere. We have clues absolutely everywhere. And so I hope that you will go and check out my videos. I'm going to start this series, and the first series that I'm going to talk about is St. Anne's Shrine and the symbolism of St. Anne's Shrine, and how I think that it's actually an old world structure, and I think that it actually leads back into one of these original 12 Titan goddesses. So thanks for spending 17 minutes with me here on Sacred Enzyme. And remember, when you look for me, I'll be here, because we're living the past, present, and the future all at the same time. So don't forget to go outside and enjoy the day. And if you can't, I hope that you can hear all of the beautiful birds in the background and the wind blowing, and can see the sunshine in the back. So with that said, have a great day, and thank you for watching Sacred Enzyme. Bye-bye.